Ladies and gentlemen, dear change makers, it is my greatest pleasure to welcome you in this renewed Grand Palais, 5 years after the first time we met here. Welcome to ChangeNOW! Look around and tell me what you see. What I see is a place forged in history. This is the home of the 1900 World Exhibition, a place that once showcased the best of human progress. And today, 125 years later, here we stand, redefining what is progress with this World Exhibition for the planet. The largest event ever, as for today, gathering actions and solutions for a better world. When you enter this room and this building on the facade, you walk past 4 magnificent statues. First, the statue of inspiration, to ignite our vision. The statue of revelation, to awaken to new possibilities. The statue of Minerva, the goddess of intelligence and wisdom, to guide our choices. And the fourth, the statue of peace, the ultimate goal of our actions. This is the home we have chosen for ChangeNOW, not only for this year, but for the years to come. Now look around again and tell me what you see. Look at each other. The person on your right and the person on your left. I see the architects of the world we want to build. I see the faces of determination, because you, each and every one of us, with our willpower and our actions, are the driving force of change. And what brings us together here is a very simple idea. And I would like to say that never underestimate an idea. Because ChangeNOW itself was born from a very simple idea. And look at what an idea can become. And this idea, very simple idea, was to bring together the most forward-thinking, the most caring, the brilliant minds, the brightest minds, the lights of our time. And when I look around, this is what I see. You are the lights, and this is the lighthouse. Now remember, last year, I explained how we set the course towards a much bigger impact. And let me follow up on this. First, we developed numerous actions all over the year, from the co-organization of the World Living Soils Forum on regenerative agriculture to a new edition of the Earth Action Report. But here are 3 remarkable landmarks I would like to share. We operated the first ever pavilion dedicated to the dialogue between civil, public, and private society in the blue zone of the COP for the first time during the COP16 desertification. We continued to develop our school ranking initiative, which after 4 years is really changing curriculums and contributing to make better higher education. We have now impacted over 1 million students. And also we reinforced our partnerships and collaborations. And I'm glad to announce that not only ChangeNOW is an official nominator to the Prince William's Earthshot Prize for the last 3 years, but ChangeNOW, for the first time, is also a nominator to the prominent Goldman Environmental Prize, also known as the Green Nobel Prize. Second, I also shared our vision of how we wanted to accelerate the impact ecosystems globally and locally. Because there are change makers everywhere, and they can all benefit from the type of support you find here at ChangeNOW, but at the local level. And so we announced last year the ChangeNOW hubs. After the launch, we received many applications, and thank you to all of you for showing the will to be part of such an exciting initiative. And today I'm delighted to unveil the first 3 ChangeNOW hubs: Sao Paulo, Tunis, and Bangalore. They are here in the room, so you can definitely give them a big warm round of applause. And this is just the beginning. If you want to be the next ChangeNOW hub, just contact us. There is so much to be done. Well, and now, this summit. What's particular in this summit? First of all, the context. The context in which this summit has been created is special in many ways. First, the world is facing an accumulation of tremendous challenges, and accompanied by the fragmentation of the world and threats, growing threats on democracy, on science, on sustainability. And I just want to highlight also that in this place, the words of climate change, women, mental health, inclusion, pollution, underprivileged are all allowed. And not only they are allowed, they are core to our mission, so use them. 2025 also marks the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. 10 years ago, in this city, 196 countries came together to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees and well below 2. The Paris Agreement is a cornerstone of climate action, and it's a symbol of how humanity can come together to face global challenges. And so we decided at ChangeNOW, well, to defend the Paris legacy. And more, we want to transform ambition into action. And this is exactly what ChangeNOW is about. Over the next 3 days, the Grand Palais becomes your home. And this is the home of thousands of change makers, of 1,000 solutions, 500 speakers, which are all telling a piece of this new narrative. And put together, this is a vision of what the world could be. This year, we welcome changemakers from 78 countries. The flags you can see on the other side of the stage are not random flags. There is one flag for each and every one country represented in the program. ChangeNOW is about action, but it is also about connections and building bridges. So meet, create, start conversations, make new friends, and learn from someone new. Now, just to wrap up also about this year's ChangeNOW Summit, this edition has got stronger on 4 main pillars. First, while you explore what's happening on stage and in the alleys, know that on the invisible side of the event, there are many meetings happening to shape the future global negotiations and to build coalitions. And in that same spirit, we are honored to welcome today here in the Grand Palais the leading teams of COP 30, but also COP16 desertification, and the upcoming COP17, as well as the UN Ocean Conference. Second big step of this year, ChangeNOW launched this year the first ChangeNOW Planet Week, consisting of 30 independent events happening all around the city during the days of ChangeNOW and around ChangeNOW. The objective is to reinforce even more this movement for global sustainability by making it even more open. So now there is this platform welcoming many other events independent from ChangeNOW in this ChangeNOW Planet Week. Third, I invite you all, go there, it's wonderful. I invite you all to go to the Water Odyssey. This is a new outdoor space dedicated to the rivers and ocean. It's just next to the River Seine. It's 2 minutes walking from here. You should go and see that. And the last thing is that on Saturday, this place, this venue, will be open to everyone. We worked with many organizations to bring here and create specific programs for young people coming from underprivileged neighborhoods, families from all backgrounds, and job seekers with a job fair. So, just one last thing now. Take a look around you one last time. What we are experiencing here is more than an event. It is the expression of action, of hope, and humanity. And as it's written behind the stage, with action comes hope. So let's focus on what matters most: concrete, collective, unwavering action. And this is our role for the next 3 days and far beyond. Be the lights, be change makers, and be the carriers of hope. Welcome to ChangeNOW 2025.
Oh, come on, we can do better than that. Hello, one and all. My name's Lefebvre, and I will be the moderator for this stage, and the following stage. If you've never met me before, I feel like I'm part of the furniture for ChangeNOW as I open the very first ChangeNOW with Santiago. Not part of the team, but I've been arriving ever since. So we've just heard from Santiago. He's laid out the momentum that ChangeNOW has had over the last few years. But part of what makes this event different is not just what you see in front of you, but what you don't see that's been happening behind the scenes. The choices that have been made behind the scenes that guide the event, that means that this is not just an event about talking about change, but rather also an event that embodies the spirit of change. From the materials to the meals that are selected, from the transport to the technology, this summit is a summit that essentially walks the talk. And here to tell us more about how that happens, please welcome to the stage co-founder and Chief Operating Officer of ChangeNOW, Rosemary Lucotte.
Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to see all of you here. So Santiago asked us to look around and tell what we see. I'd like to take a moment to highlight what you might not see. Because this summit isn't just about change. It embodies change. ChangeNOW is pioneering a new generation of events, ones that inspire, that blend rational impact with emotion, art, beauty, and purpose. All this at a large scale and in a fully sustainable and inclusive approach. And this goes beyond the summit, because it's setting new standards, and it's being recognized as a role model in the event industry. In 2024, ChangeNOW was awarded Sustainable Event of the Year. So, what you might not see is many details that we've taken into consideration when we designed the summit. For instance, you won't see plastic badges. You won't see plastic bottles, nor cans. You won't see plastic signage, nor goodies or flyers. You won't see carpeted booths. You won't see also flashy logos everywhere. But you will see powerful content and partners who chose to put their actions first, front and center. You will taste sustainable food, drinks, coffee. And at the end of the summit, what you might not see too is that 97% of what you see here will be repurposed or given a second life. And after the summit is over, our job continues, our work continues. We will measure the carbon footprint of the summit, and we will balance our impact as much as we can by contributing to the restoration of natural carbon sinks. And you too played a role, an active role, in reducing the carbon footprint of the event. Because many of you chose to come here in a sustainable way, or to combine your trip with other meaningful commitments in Paris. When you registered, you were all invited to contribute to your carbon footprint, and many of you chose to do so. So thank you very much for your commitment too. Now, ChangeNOW is also an inclusive summit. For those with hearing difficulties, or for anyone who isn't fluent in English, you'll have live translations in your own language on your smartphone. On Saturday, we will organize special learning exhibitions for blind or visually impaired participants, because they are too often excluded from large-scale events. We also offered solidarity passes for those in need. And on Saturday, we opened the doors for free to students, job seekers, but also children and participants from underserved areas. Because environmental and social topics affect all of us, and we want this event to be accessible to everyone. Now, something else you might not see, and which is probably the most powerful part of the summit, is that after the summit, it continues. Your positive impact will spread to your teams, to your families, your cities, your countries, and to the world. And for that to happen, you have, during these 3 days, a fantastic program of networking opportunities with ice-breaking sessions every morning, with a networking app, which I really encourage you to download if you haven't done so far. You can organize, schedule meetups directly during the summit. We will also have a full program of open meetups by topics, by thematics. So seize these opportunities, meet each other, because this will scale your impact. And for some of you, it might even change your life. So I wish you a wonderful summit, and let's make these 3 days count.
Thank you, thank you. How's everybody doing? Okay-ish, maybe, sort of, kind of. The sun's out, it's not raining, we're on to a good day. So we're 10 years on from the Paris Agreement, which was a really significant milestone in the journey to climate change. It brought together the world around shared goals. It shifted ambition, and it opened the door to momentous action. We've seen progress, but we've also seen setbacks, and let's face it, we've learned a lot. And this next session is all about what the Paris Agreement made possible, what hasn't worked, and what comes next. So to explore this, I have 4 incredible individuals that I'd like to welcome to the stage. We're going to have the president of COP 21, an ex-president of the Constitutional Council, Laurent Fabius, a member of the Elders and former president of the Republic of Ireland, Mary Robinson, chief executive officer of COP 30, Anna Tony, and of course the founder and CEO of ChangeNOW, Santiago Lefebvre. Please welcome them back to the stage. In the meanwhile, I'll just do a little dance. Write a little song. Get down tonight. Isn't that how it goes? I think we're just about ready. Have we got all the chairs? Just out of curiosity, who here is it their first time here at ChangeNOW? Just a raise of hands. Wow! Super. And who, like me, feels like they've been part of the furniture, like they've been here multiple times before? It's incredible to see so many new faces. Welcome. Welcome to the ChangeNOW family. We're ready to go? Welcome. Please join me. I feel like I'm so far away. Okay. So this is quite a conversation to be having. And Laurent, I kind of want to start with you because you were there and presided over what was considered one of the biggest climate agreements in the history of the world. Looking back, what did the Paris Agreement make possible?
First, hello everybody. Well, it was 10 years ago. I remember when France was chosen 2 years before, the different ministers came to me and said, "You have been chosen, good luck." And in this good luck, I thought that it would be a bit difficult, but we worked, and Paris was made possible by the conjunction of 3 planets. First, the scientific planet. Second, the civil society planet. And third, the government's planet. It was not easy to get a good result. When we entered the COP, I say that for you, Anna, there were 1,600 paragraphs between brackets. And at the end, it must be 0. We work and we made it possible. And today, each of these planets is under attack. science, civil society with the usual spoilers, and the governments because attacks against multilateralism. But I think the hope is still there. I'm pretty confident about Belém, COP30, and we must be faithful to the spirit of Paris, which is better, faster, and together. And if we don't forget that, there will be a success in Belém.
Mary, I'd kind of like to jump to you on the same point. What did the Paris Agreement mean to you?
What I remember vividly from the Paris Agreement, I was the special envoy of the UN Secretary General, was how important climate justice was. Climate justice made Paris a success. Because when we went into Paris, despite all the extra ministerial meetings that the president of the COP, Laurent, had organized, we had not got any decision on the goal. And Tony de Brum of the Marshall Islands from the inside, and the indigenous communities, civil society, young people, women leaders, we marched in the street. I'm sure some of you remember 1.5 to stay alive. Who remembers? 1.5 to stay alive. And Tony de Brum chaired the High Ambition Coalition. And the High Ambition Coalition had one goal, to get 1.5 into the text. And that happened. And then the scientists had to be instructed, what is the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees? And they brought out this special report in October 2018. And they told us that there is a huge difference between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees, that in that time, bad things may happen. Probably the coral reefs will disappear. The coral reefs are under terrible threat at the moment. Probably the Arctic ice will disappear. The Arctic ice is shrinking. Probably the permafrost will melt and throw up not just carbon, but methane. It's happening. 30% of the permafrost is melting. So we're witnessing. And why are we not in a crisis? Why are politicians not in a mental crisis mode? A crisis with every opportunity to solve it is a human problem. We just have to switch most of the money that subsidizes fossil fuel into incentivizing clean energy. You know, it's just a human problem, political will. Why aren't we doing it?
I mean, Mary, when you say it, you make it sound so easy, like, why are we not doing it? Santiago, many might not know that the Paris Agreement was almost like the seed that started ChangeNOW. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what it meant to you and what's been created here as a result?
Well, I think that we can, more than just ChangeNOW, I think we can talk about a COP21 generation. Because when we started, and even now, when we talk to entrepreneurs and people which are really trying to work in climate or environment, and you ask them, when have you started? A lot of them say 2015, 2016. And there is a whole generation of people who really got engaged because of this agreement. This way, for me, I think that there is a moment before COP21 and a moment after that. And this has really been a shift. And for us, the fact that I had the chance not to be in the negotiations, no, but still, I visited the COP21, and I realized that there was these goals, amazing goals, but we didn't know how to go there. And the assessment was that if we want to manage to reach those goals, we need to get together all the private sector, all the entrepreneurs, the innovator, and even more civil society. And this is how the spark started.
And look at us now. Look at us now. Anna, I want to jump to you next. What kind of momentum do you think is needed in Belém at COP30? Sorry, I'm asking the wrong question. We know that COP21 was a huge, momentous moment, but we also know we've learned a lot since then. What do you think are some of the truths that we need to acknowledge about what we've learned in the time since the Paris Agreement?
So first of all, good morning. Really nice to be here. Congratulations for ChangeNOW for this event. It's wonderful to be with Mary and Fabius also here. And I think the Paris Agreement is this. Now, the Paris Agreement is this ability that happened, that spark that was mentioned, that made everybody move. And if we, at the Paris Agreement, was a time when we had goals and objectives. Now we have plans, we have investment. Now people are actually acting. And I think what perhaps we have not taken as seriously as we now need to do is what was said, science. I think science at the time when we had the Paris Agreement gave us some hope that the consequences of climate change was going to come a little bit later. 2035, if I remember, is the type of disasters that we're seeing now. So I think if we knew what we know now, and I think that is the objective of COP30, is we need to accelerate. We need it, everybody needs to move. Now it's not just a question of waiting a COP, waiting governments. We need the private sector, we need the people. This word that we use in multirão, which I just learned from Mr. Fabius, which is uncollective in French. So we need that movement going because the emergency, the speed of change is much faster. So if before we felt that we could delegate this to somebody else, to governments, we can't. And I think that's the spirit that we take in COP30. We need everybody. We need this. We need the private sector, we need civil society, subnational governments, and obviously federal governments and the negotiations. So that's, I think, the spirit that we learned from Paris that now is very clear to us.
Collaboration is 1,000% key. Santiago, you've been convening people here at ChangeNOW for coming up to 8 years. What do you think we need to acknowledge since the Paris Agreement?
I didn't hear the question, sorry.
I said you've been convening people here at ChangeNOW for 8 years now. What do you see beyond collaboration or in line with collaboration that we also need to acknowledge about what we've learned from the Paris Agreement?
Well, several things. The first one is that definitely the knowledge about the topic has evolved dramatically. I think that we, and even I would say ChangeNOW, but the global ecosystem started 10 years ago like newbies in the field. But now science really grew, and we saw that we started from a very narrow point of view of just climate issues to how this articulates with the planetary boundaries, then beyond that with also other aspects, in also the inclusion part and the social part. And so now I think that we evolved to a holistic approach, and this is now pretty well admitted, and I think that this is one of the biggest evolutions I've seen right now.
It's holistic. We also need to think about inclusion. Mary, I can see you ready to jump in there as well.
Well, you know, there's no doubt, I agree with Anna and with Santiago, that Paris did create a big movement, necessarily, and we need even more of that. But Paris also weakened something by deciding that all countries should submit their nationally determined contributions. UN speak, I know, climate plans. Every country, it diluted the common but differentiated responsibility of wealthy countries for the injustice that they were causing with climate change, the climate justice point. It meant that all countries had to, before Paris, fill out these climate plans. And the number of developing countries who, in their NDCs, in their climate plans, said, we want to have clean energy. That's the way we want to go. And after Paris, what happened? Nothing. No plans. No plan for developing countries to get access to clean energy. Nothing until Glasgow. COP 26. the Jet P for South Africa, and now we have a few other Jet Ps. And actually, it's more loans than grant money, and you need grant money for the moving from coal, for example, to cleaner energy. So I'm not happy with how wealthy countries have responded to, in a way, by making everybody responsible for climate plans, it weakened the polluters' responsibility, the wealthy countries, for what we are doing and inflicting on the rest of the world.
In acknowledging what's not working, I think it's also important to acknowledge, in acknowledging some hard truths, we also need to acknowledge what's not working. What have we learned that we just need to let go of as we move forward in the next 10 years? Mary, I'll start with you. You started by talking about the responsibility of the biggest polluters. What should we be doing instead?
I think there's been a failure of real accountability. There's been too much greenwashing. There's been too much at COPs, big announcements with film stars and other people and photos, opportunity, and then nothing happens. Now, I don't want to be too negative. Quite a lot has happened. I agree with these points, but I think we need to be honest. We need much more accountability and much more of the sense of who is causing the problem, the major emitters, the G20 countries. Are they going to come to Belém with ambitious NDCs? I have to acknowledge, as an Irish person, the United Kingdom is giving leadership. Woo! And Brazil is giving leadership. What about all the others? What about the EU? What about France? Come on. We've got to be ambitious.
Santiago, you are a person that I know is incredibly ambitious. The first ChangeNOW had about 3,000 people. I think last year was 35,000 people that we have convening here. Similar sort of question, what are you seeing in terms of where we're moving, and what do you think, how do we need to be thinking differently for the next 10 years?
Well, I just wanted also to highlight that I totally agree with what Mary said, that we need to really see where the issue comes from. And definitely, if we don't phase out from fossil fuels, we won't ever manage to do the job. And there is a lot of things happening right now just to earn years of fossil fuels. And I think that this is really a focus we need all to have, actually. And for me, one of the very, very important things for the step forwards is really this question of co-benefits. I was saying about the holistic approach. I think that it would be super powerful that the different COPs and international negotiations align on the main, I would say, the main things on which they have to negotiate. Because if we align on this and you look for co-benefits. A co-benefit is, for example, when I do something for biodiversity, is also serving climate. And if I do something in climate, it's also serving ocean. And so if we manage to really put our weight on what is at the core of those co-benefits, we could make a lot of progress.
I love that. Let's think of the bigger benefits that we can get from each of the things that we're implementing. Let's think of the benefits, that kind of cycle of benefits, rather than thinking quite so narrowly. Anna, we've got COP30 around the corner, and given where we are, given that we're reflecting on 10 years of the Paris Agreement, it can be, COP30 has the ability to be a real turning point for us. What needs to happen, do you think, to make that a COP of action rather than something that feels more symbolic?
First of all, I'm optimistic. So when we started the Paris Agreement, we were heading to 4 degrees, over 4 degrees, 4.5 degrees. 10 years have gone. Okay, we are heading to 2.5. But a lot has happened since Paris, and I think we really have to first celebrate everything that has happened. And this is important because it feels that the transition has already started. So I think it's not enough. We need to get to 1.5. So we need to accelerate, but acknowledging how much has changed and that the transition is inevitable, is absolutely inevitable, but we need to do it quick, I think is our goal. We really need to move that faster. And to move that faster, we need to move that together. The word that was said, that Fabius just mentioned in the Paris Agreement is the same. We can only do this together. Carbon molecules do not have passports. The consequences of climate change does not ask for permission or ask for a visa to come and flood our house or the heat waves that we feel. So if we don't do it together, and if we don't realize that it's not only up to governments, which has a lot of responsibilities, but we need everybody together and doing fast. So if every one of us do a little bit for the climate every day in whatever position that we are, the solutions are there. We know the solutions. We have the solutions. The financing is there. What we need now is enough pressure so that governments, private sector, and people, because one of the things that I don't think we have done enough is to also speak about consumption. We don't talk about consumption. We wanted fossil fuels, that was just mentioned. We wanted transitioning away from fossil fuel, but the demand for fossil fuel continues growing. So if we don't now put our heads on also how we're going to diminish consumption, we are not going to get the actions that we need.
So we need to expand what we're looking at beyond. That deserves a round of applause. We need to be focusing at both ends of the spectrum, not just at what's causation, not just the impact. Laurent, what would you want to see different at Belém to get some more momentum going?
The key word is implementation. Implementation. It's not the same thing. You raised the question, what did we learn from Paris? We learned in particular that it is not the same thing green talking, greenwashing, and green acting. There's a big difference between the three. And the aims have been put in Paris. 1.5, we know that. Finance, we know that. Global stock take, we know that. NDC, we know that. But now it's time to implement and to check. I have heard somebody speaking about baby, you have to do that, you have to do that. I would say implement, baby, implement. That's the point. That's the point. And I'm very optimistic for Belém, because Brazil is a good choice, because there is President Lula, and because we know that if we want to have a hope for the long term, we have to act in the short term. And as it was said, not to make a distinction between fight against desertification, the question of ocean, the question of climate, everything is interwoven. And it will be clear in Belém. But we have to insist on this implementation problem. Accountability, you say that, Mary, you're right. And we have probably to imagine a different functioning of COPs, or maybe some sort of institution which will be in charge of checking that every NDC is okay, that the different governments are implementing what they have promised. The key word is acting and implementing now.
Implementation, baby. It's all going to be about implementation. Here's the challenge. We're heading into a pragmatic geopolitical landscape at the moment, and implementation in that space with rising nationalism, looming elections, starts to feel more complicated, starts to feel more charged, starts to feel not... It's easier for it to drop down the priority list. So how do we keep climate action alive? How do we actually continue to implement in the way that Laurent is discussing, and do it in a way that's effective in a space that's becoming increasingly divided? Mary, I'll jump to you first, because we have to be realistic about the times that we're in right now.
I do agree with Laurent that implementation is vital, and the implementation has to be very specific in Belém. It means G20 countries in particular, because they're the biggest emitters. And actually, I was quite hopeful about the Zoom call yesterday of the Secretary General with a lot of heads of state, and in particular with what China said. China committed to an NDC, its climate plan that will cover all sectors and all climate greenhouse gas emissions. That's significant. We need that. We need the money. Baku was weak, which put a lot of pressure on Belém. And we actually need we need to find that 1.3 trillion by 2030, not 2035. And we need to do it with new innovative ways. The solidarity levies, let's succeed with at least one or two of those in Belém. I mean, if we could have a breakthrough of a pot of money for implementation, that would help the momentum. But I also agree, it's all of us. It's all of us, movements of movements. And I'm so pleased that Belém has indigenous leadership that's going to be very significant, because that's going to help as well. That's the moral leadership that we saw in Paris. And that is really, really vital. But we have to make the big emitters face their responsibility. And that means governments coming with and the European Union and France pushing the European Union as it usually did. And I know there are geopolitical problems here in France, but it's so important. I mean, let me just finish on the urgency. You know, COVID hit the world, and very quickly the industrialized part of the world found $10 trillion, bang, because we were in a crisis. Why do we not understand that we're in a crisis of fragility of our world, the climate and nature crisis? And we need politicians to be in crisis mode. We need Europe to be in crisis mode. Yes, we have Ukraine and a very worrying way in which there's peace talks are going on that are very favorable at the moment to Russia, for the reasons that we know. That's worrying. And a lot of emphasis on security. But the crisis of climate and nature doesn't stop for distraction of wars or distraction of anything. It is continuing. And we have to literally get our politicians into crisis mode. That's our job. Feed them with all the possibilities of change and the momentum for change, and make them take it seriously.
We're in crisis mode, and we always manage to pull together in crisis mode if we can remember that that's where we are. Before I move on to the last question, I'm going to jump really quickly to Santiago in the same guise. ChangeNOW took place every year for 8 years. COVID hit, we moved and we made it happen. Every year we've had ChangeNOW. How do you want people sort of engaging in this space this year, given the landscape and the geopolitical landscape that we're operating within, such that we can continue to create the momentum that you're all talking about here on the stage?
Well, you know, I think the first thing is always to continue. It's perseverance. Never let down what you're doing. And even though there was COVID, indeed we did an ambitious edition during COVID because we wanted to hold the place. That was for sure. I just also wanted to add to that and come back to the word of implementation, which is really important. And for someone, for example, like me, who is not at the table of negotiations, how can I implement something? Well, the thing is, never ask for a permission. If you wait for a permission, actually, you don't have it, and so you don't implement anything. And this is how we started. This is how many people are acting. They don't ask permissions. They just go. And I think that this is important, because what we're talking about is something where we need everyone, but we can't afford to wait for anyone. So just let's go and keep moving.
I love that. We need absolutely everybody, but we cannot afford to wait for anybody, so we need to get moving. Last question, and it'll be a quick one to the remaining of you, starting with Laurent. What should this audience be carrying forward with them into the next 10 years? We're launching into ChangeNOW, we're launching into Belém, we're launching into the next 10 years. What should people be carrying forth with them?
I had a conversation with Michael Bloomberg, who is both American and pro-climate. Okay. And Michael Bloomberg told me two things. Well, Mr. Fabius, we have to avoid two mistakes. The first one is to separate short-term and long-term. Okay, long-term is very important, but in the long term, we are all dead. If we want to reach the long term, let's act in the short term first. And the second mistake to avoid is to be pessimistic. If you say to people, today it's difficult, tomorrow it will be worse, and I don't speak about the day after tomorrow, forget everything. I think, okay, situation is difficult, and particularly because some president has taken the decision he has taken, okay, but the president is not the whole country. And we have to remain optimistic and to act in this direction, and ChangeNOW can help us, okay?
I'm going to have to wrap up there. I'd love to kind of continue the dialogue, but here are the key takeaways. If we're going to have long-term change, we need short-term action, and each and every one of us has the capability of doing something to move things forward. The key word here I think everybody needs to take away is implementation, baby. Implementation, baby. So we're not just here remembering the Paris Agreement, we're creating the next 10 years. And so long as we leave this room with hope, we all have opportunity to actually be able to make the change. Thank you so much to all of my panelists, and have a fabulous rest of the day at ChangeNOW. It does, doesn't it?